The Pacific War was, in many ways, a story of two halves. In the beginning, 1941 to 1942, Japan swept across the map like a tide, conquering islands, driving the Allies far from their shores, and claiming the Pacific as its own. It was an era of bold expansion, of confidence that seemed unshakable. But tides always turn. By 1943, the Allies had regained their footing. Carrier groups grew stronger, supply lines steadied, and island by island, mile by mile, the Japanese Empire began to shrink back toward its homeland. Among the many reasons for this shift, one stands above the rest: the balance of air power. This is a story not just of nations or strategy, but of machines, how the quality of aircraft and the pilots behind them changed the very fate of the Pacific War. At the heart of Japan's early dominance was a single machine, the Mitsubishi A6M0. Sleek, light, and impossibly agile, it became the symbol of Japan's air supremacy in the early 1940s. Allied pilots feared its presence. Those who met it in combat often didn't return. At its peak, the Zero achieved a kill-to-loss ratio as high as 12-1, numbers almost unheard of in aerial warfare. Its secret was in the design philosophy. Engineers stripped away armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, even basic pilot protection, all in the name of speed, range, and maneuverability. The result was a fighter that could outturn and outclimb nearly anything in the sky. Light, fast, agile, but fragile, as some would later describe it. In the hands of Japan's highly trained pilots, the Zero was almost untouchable. From 1941 through 1943, it ruled the Pacific skies, a graceful killer, elegant and deadly, representing both the brilliance and the risks of Japan's engineering philosophy. But even legends meet their match. When American pilots realized they couldn't outturn the Zero, they decided to outthink it. Out of desperation came ingenuity, tactics that would turn weakness into strategy. The first was called boom and zoom. Spot the enemy from the ground or by radar, climb high, dive fast, fire a short, focused burst, and pull back up before the Zero could react. It played to the American plane's strength, diving speed, and to the Zero's fatal flaw: no armor. One good hit, and it was done. Then came the thatch weave. Two Allied fighters would fly toward each other in a weaving pattern. When a Zero tailed one, it would drift right into the crosshairs of the other. Simple, brutal, and incredibly effective. These tactics didn't make the American planes faster or nimbler. They simply made the fight fair, and for the first time, the sky wasn't all Japan's. By late 1942, the tide began to turn. Not through luck, but through engineering. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps introduced two new fighters, the F-6F Hellcat and the F-4U Corsair. Both could match, and in many ways, surpass the Zero. They were faster, tougher, and packed heavier guns. Their cockpits were armored, their fuel tanks self-sealing, and their engines built to take punishment. What these planes lacked in elegance, they made up for in endurance. They could dive harder, climb faster, and survive hits that would tear a Zero apart. And perhaps most importantly, they could be built by the thousands. By early 1943, American pilots were no longer outmatched. Japan's days of air superiority were fading. Faced with this new generation of U.S. fighters, Japan needed an answer, something advanced enough to reclaim the sky. That answer would come from an unlikely source: a seaplane. Japan's answer came from a company few outside the military had heard of: Kawanishi, a firm best known for building float planes. Their next project was unconventional, a fighter that could take off from water. The result was the N1K Rex, a single-engine seaplane designed to patrol far-flung island chains where no airfields existed. It first flew in May 1942, just as Japan's empire reached its peak. Powered by a Mitsubishi MK-4C Kase engine producing roughly 1,400 horsepower, the Rex was fast for a float plane but heavy and awkward. With its large pontoon and drag, it topped out at only 304 miles per hour, too slow for the new era of high-speed aerial warfare. As the tide of war shifted, Kawanishi engineers saw promise in the Rex's airframe. They decided to strip away the pontoon, add landing gear, and transform it into a pure land-based fighter. The new design received the more powerful Nakajima Homare engine, rated at 2,000 horsepower, pushing top speed up to 355 miles per hour. It carried 4 20mm cannons in its wings, serious firepower compared to the lightly armed Zero. On paper, it was everything Japan needed: faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. But reality had sharp edges. The Homare engine, rushed into service, proved temperamental and prone to failure. The landing gear, lengthened to fit the larger propeller, was fragile. Poor heat treatment of the metal often led to cracks and collapse. Still, the prototype flew for the first time on December 27, 1942, and impressed enough to be ordered into production under the designation N1K-J. Allied forces would later know it by a simple, almost comical code name: George. It was in many ways the finest fighter Japan had yet produced, an aircraft born from desperation and ingenuity, powerful enough to challenge the new American machines. But like much of Japan's wartime innovation, it came burdened with flaws that no amount of brilliance could fully hide. Kawanishi didn't stop there. Almost the moment the first George took to the air, engineers began sketching a refined version, something that could fix the flaws and make the design easier to build. The result was the N1K-J Shiden Kai, or Violet Lightning Modified. The changes were smart, almost elegant. The wings were moved from mid-fuselage to a low-wing configuration, allowing for shorter, sturdier landing gear. The fuselage was stretched, and the tail redesigned for greater stability. By simplifying the internal structure, engineers cut roughly 550 pounds from the airframe and made assembly far more efficient. Yet the essentials remained: the same 2,000 horsepower Homare engine and 4 20mm cannons that gave the George its punch. But what truly set the Shiden Kai apart was a touch of genius: a mercury-actuated switch connected to its combat flaps. When the aircraft pulled high G-forces in a tight turn, the Mercury completed an electrical circuit, automatically deploying the flaps by up to 30 degrees. This gave the plane a sudden boost of lift and let it turn tighter than nearly anything in the sky. As soon as the pilot leveled out, the flaps retracted on their own. The result was astonishing agility, a roll rate of 82 degrees per second at 240 miles per hour, lightning fast, almost instinctive. Even though its top speed of 370 miles per hour couldn't quite match the Hellcat or Corsair, the Shiden Kai could outturn and outclimb them both. It was, by every measure, one of the most agile and sophisticated fighters ever built in the Pacific. Proof that Japanese engineering, even in its darkest hour, still had brilliance left to give. Despite its brilliance, the Shiden Kai arrived too late to exist in large numbers. Between 1943 and 1945, Japan built roughly 1,007 N1K-J George fighters and just 406 of the improved N1K-J Kai. Counting the earlier floatplane version, total production barely reached 1,500 aircraft, a fraction of the 5,000-plus Zeros still rolling off assembly lines during the same period. Because resources were scarce, these advanced fighters were reserved for Japan's most skilled aviators. Many went to the elite 343rd Kokutai, a special naval air group formed in 1944 and commanded by legendary ace Minoru Genda. Its mission? Defend the Japanese homeland against the inevitable Allied onslaught. The Shiden Kai's combat debut came in the war's final, desperate months. On March 19, 1945, over the port city of Kure, roughly 300 American aircraft, Hellcats, Corsairs, and dive bombers, clashed with an equal number of Japanese fighters, including Georges, Kais, and aging Zeros. The result was brutal and nearly even. The U.S. lost 14 fighters and 8 pilots, while Japan lost 15 fighters and 13 pilots. It wasn't victory, but it was proof. Even in 1945, Japan could still build a plane capable of standing toe-to-toe with America's best. Captured American pilots later admitted their shock. "We thought Japan was finished, then we ran into these." For a brief moment, the sky over Japan was equal again, lit by the flash of violet lightning. For all its brilliance in the air, the N1K could never change the war below. By the time it entered full production, Japan's factories were burning. Allied bombers had reduced assembly plants to rubble, supply chains were broken, and even basic materials, aluminum, fuel, steel, were running out. Every Shiden Kai that rolled off the line was a small miracle, built under siege. The aircraft itself was never meant for mass production. Compared to the Zero, it was far more complex, with tighter tolerances and more moving parts. The Zero, simple and light, could be built faster and by less skilled hands. Exactly what Japan needed in 1945, not precision engineering that demanded perfection. Then there were the pilots. The N1K was powerful but demanding, a machine for seasoned aces. Yet by the war's end, Japan had lost most of its veterans. What remained were young, half-trained flyers with little combat experience. The military handed them Zeros instead, lighter, easier, and forgiving. Even if Japan had found the materials to build thousands of Shiden Kais, it no longer had the men to fly them. The violet lightning had come too late, too few, and to a sky already lost. In the end, the N1K-J George and its refined cousin, the N1K-2-J Shiden Kai, stood as proof of what Japan's engineers could still achieve, even with their nation in ruins. They were the final flourish of a design philosophy that prized agility, precision, and courage in equal measure. A last reminder that brilliance doesn't disappear just because time runs out. Where the Zero had once ruled, the N1K shined. Too late to matter, but too brilliant to forget. It could not turn the tide of war, but it remains one of the finest fighters ever built, a machine that earned the respect of friend and foe alike. And maybe there's something poetic in that. Imagine being an American pilot in 1945 and hearing over the radio, "Watch out, there are a bunch of Georges overhead." You wouldn't know whether to laugh or brace for impact. Some legends win wars, others simply prove what was possible. What do you think? Was the N1K Japan's greatest what if? Like if you believe forgotten machines still deserve their glory. Subscribe. Next time, we'll uncover another unsung icon of the skies.